Welcome to Distorted Opinions. I'm Kayla, and I am joined by Ted this week, and we have a special guest with us this episode. We're joined by Jay Graham, who is a local to us singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Thank you for joining us today,
Welcome,
Jay.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Yeah, anytime. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we were chatting before we started the show. So you've got an album. We're probably going to talk quite a bit about the songs that we've been listening to off of that. And you're also teaching lessons. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But I thought maybe what we could start with is just talking a little bit about how you got into playing guitar and obviously you're a music fan. How long have you been playing and what got you into it? Do you play any other instruments or is it just guitar?
Primarily guitar. I mean, I've spent, a summer here or there playing the piano or the drums just to introduce myself to techniques and things. And even did one summer where I played the trumpet. I borrowed a trumpet from a friend and just to learn, the embouchure and try to acquaint myself with other elements of those instruments. And I play bass, which isn't that far from guitar, obviously. So I started playing when I was about 13. At that point was mostly just self-taught, taking a few lessons here and there and, goofing off with friends. And it wasn't until like later years in high school where I started to play in bands with different friends. And then coming out of high school, I went to college and didn't really think of music as a profession. Thought of just something to do. So I didn't, I took music courses here and there as electives, but never really studied it. And it wasn't until later in life where I decided, I could actually study this. And, somebody had offered me a job teaching and I was like, I guess I could do that.
You mean I can actually make a living off of this?
I had been gigging before that for years and with bands, and I had been in a band in the early to mid 90s called the Arthur Dent Foundation. We were kind of a jam band. We had played in Worcester a lot, and we used to do every Monday night at the Plantation Club. We did that for like 2 years, and then we did every Monday night at Tammany Hall for 2 years. So we had that Monday night residency for about 4 years, which was great for us to really explore things. It was mostly original, a lot of jamming, a lot of funk, and that sort of stuff. Very, very progressive, a lot of odd sort of music, but it was good. It
sounds like the wheelhouse of music that I'm really into. So you're speaking my language over here.
It was definitely a fun band, and we it was around 2000, 2001 where we finally kind of disbanded, and at that point, I had just gone back to college to finish my bachelor's because I hadn't finished before. I had been kind of consumed with that because even when we were doing the Monday nights, we were still, we were gigging on the weekends. It was like a full-time job. But as you know, with original music and that sort of stuff, the pay is very minimal. So it was like a full-time job that I wasn't really getting paid for. And all the money we were putting back into the band to record albums and do different things, pay for rehearsal space and, all the stuff that goes along with an original band when you're young and nobody's got a house to rehearse in or anything. So, so that was a great experience. And that's when I had started really studying music because one of the members of the band actually said to me one day, he was like, at a rehearsal, he's like, he said to all of us, he's like, you guys are all great musicians. He had joined the band a little later on. He's like, you guys are all great musicians, but should really all start taking lessons. So we all did. Everybody did in the band. This was, we all started studying. I had studied jazz at that point. I started studying jazz with Rich Falco, who's a jazz instructor in Worcester. And, it was really a big bump up for my playing at that point and helped me get a lot of my theory and understanding of chords and all that stuff down. And then after that, was when I started teaching primarily. It wasn't until the band broke up that I had started thinking about performing solo. And then at that point I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? I've been in a band for years and always worked in that sort of situation. So in, 2003, I think it was, I started performing solo, and I was still playing in bands at that point. So at one point I remember in 2006, 2007, I think I was playing in 3 or 4 bands, performing solo. It was, every single Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sundays were gigs, and rotating through that. while teaching. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's pretty much where I've been working, for the last handful of years. Since.
I mean, I was going to say, as much as lessons are very helpful and gives you the rudimentary basics, just the fact that you're playing 4 days live a week, 3 days a week, whatever, for how many years, it obviously reinforces possibly bad habits or comfortable habits at the same time. But that certainly is pretty awesome. I also started learning guitar around 13, 14 and joined a garage band with friends, and basically similar thing. We just jammed at my parents' house, and then I switched over to drums because we kicked out our drummer at the time, and somebody needed to play drums, and I opted to learn. And but at the same time, I never really pursued it because I didn't really think there was a lot of money behind it. I mean, obviously, as you said, the gigging for originals especially is you're not making gas money, more or less. And, so I never really pursued it. And certainly, having friends over on occasion, it's still a hobby, still really enjoy it. But it's really awesome to hear that you were able to find a way to transition into lessons and make that a more permanent establishment of music, but still have all the fun along the way.
yeah it was interesting because it was kind of a leap for me. I remember when a friend of mine, he was manager at a music store, offered me a job teaching because their teacher had up and left, and he knew me and he knew what I was doing and what I was studying, and he said, if you'd like to give it a shot. And I was like, all right. And then, immediately within like 3 weeks, I had like 40 students, and was like, all right, this is this is intense. and I haven't looked back since, but it was a leap, because like I said, I had never thought of it and, of it as a career, or else I would have probably attacked it more as a career.
Right.
Instead, I studied sociology, which, is not a career either. So.
I mean, I knew a guy, so I was in the marching band in college. And when I went in freshman year, we had a guy who I believe was a senior at the time. He was studying, I want to say, public policy and administration, and decided his senior year to switch to music as a major. And so I went to UMass, and in general, it seems that most music majors don't complete their bachelor's in 4 years, especially if their intent is to go into teaching, because you have to do, I think, a year of student teaching at a school, and then you have all your classes on top of that. And so the fact that his senior year, he switched from one major he was almost done with to music, where he then did another, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 years that he did on top of that of undergrad to get his music degree. I was just like, wow, I can't even imagine. I mean, I switched my senior year from pre-veterinary science to communications, which was kind of a 180, but also I was fortunate that I took a lot of college level classes in high school. So I already had a lot of my prerequisites done. And so I still managed to finish the communications curriculum in a year, basically. But that alone, like, I couldn't even wrap my mind around, well, I might have to do an extra year. And this guy did 4 or 5 more years just to get a music degree. So it was kind of crazy. But we were going back to your teaching lessons. We were talking a little bit before we started the show that you've actually stopped at the moment doing gigging, and now you're pretty much just teaching lessons full time because you've taken on yet another teaching job, plus you're doing all of your lessons that you've been doing at the music shop in Worcester.
Yeah. And
you're also teaching lessons out of your home studio. You're doing some of those on Zoom. What has that been like?
It's been really, really exciting and interesting. I took a job teaching at Cushing Academy in Ashburnham, a couple of mornings a week, 3 days a week, basically mornings and early afternoons. But it's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to teach in a school environment, which is nice. But it's definitely a change for me having to, get dressed and go to work in the morning in that sort of environment. Being a musician, I'm a morning person anyway, and I'm not not the typical stereotypical musician who you picture sleeping in and stuff.
Right. Well, you got the gig late the night before. You got to sleep in. It's part of the deal.
Yeah. Even then, I was always up early.
Wow. More power to you.
It was tough. It was tough, especially in the years where I was doing those 2 a.m. gigs. It was always difficult getting up 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning for no reason. I had nothing to do. I just
need 6 hours. You're fine.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was, adding that to my teaching was quite a bit because I was already teaching 5 days a week and my schedule was packed. I teach till almost 8:30 Monday through Friday at night.
Wow.
So having to tack on a couple of mornings, the morning time was my time. That was the time where I had the opportunity to rest a little bit more, take care of chores around the house and, practice, do things like that, where now it's like all that time is almost gone. So now on the weekends, I am taking care of things around the house, doing the weekend warrior type thing, which, I'm not, I used to do the gigging as a weekend warrior type thing.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to getting back to doing some playing, but the last show I did was back in November. I haven't done anything in December.
Yeah.
Well, December just started, but I don't have anything booked in December or January. And so I'll probably start up a little bit in a little while, maybe in the fall. I'm starting to get a swing of how things feel. And I'm also looking at the school schedule. We have breaks, there's break weeks. Even this holiday season, I have 3 weeks off. So, if I had the foresight to realize that 3 months ago, I probably would have booked something or could have at least, thought about scheduling a show or two during that time. So.
Yeah, just get on the phone. Be like, hey, kick that person out. You know who I am. Just let me in.
Or, if you need somebody on any night, I'm here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so tough. I mean, again, we were talking a little bit about this, that I don't think the average person realizes how time consuming it is to be a musician, both gigging, but also where you're also teaching lessons on top of that. And you said you had 40 to 50 students with one of the places that you're teaching lessons at. And then now you've got the gig at the school. And I can't even imagine trying to squeeze in playing gigs on top of that if you're teaching till 8:30 at night, then if you were to go play a gig,
I was canceling gigs to get to canceling lessons to get to gigs all the time, and which is inconvenient for students. It doesn't, they don't, as long as you're not doing it consistently, but Thursday and Friday nights were difficult. I was constantly telling my students, can we bump to this day? Or I can't meet this week because of this or that.
Right.
So,
do you find it a challenge? Obviously, with teaching students, you're varying skill levels. You're not necessarily playing what you want to play all the time. But after you play all day or manage X number of lessons, do you still have gas in the tank to still pick up the guitar to play what you want to do at the end of the day? Or are you just done? It's
mostly my voice. A lot of times by the end of the day, my voice, because I sing too, and having to try to sing at the end of the day sometimes is very difficult. But absolutely, that element of it is very difficult. So, and also not being able to always practice what you want to practice. If I had my way, I'd probably be sitting around learning Steely Dan solos all day, but it's not, it's not what I'm doing.
Right.
Well, and not to say that you don't have just muscle memory after playing for so long, but it certainly, I know playing drums, even if it's something you've played a lot, boy, you need to shake the rust off after a couple of weeks if you don't go back to it or not keeping up with it, because somehow that happens. Even
I remember
though
the first few shows after the pandemic, the first shutdown, when I went back that summer, I was like, wow, this is weird. I haven't done a 3-hour show, because I had done some online shows, but they were like 45-minute sets or an hour here, nothing like the 3-hour show. Which, is a lot. That's a lot of songs. You end up playing 45, 50 songs sometimes in a 3-hour show, because they're all 2 minutes,
Right.
When you're doing solo acoustic type stuff.
Sure.
And I remember the first show or two back, I was like, wow, Definitely.
Need to go on vacation. You're just
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah, that was a
Got to
lot.
build up the stamina to get back to that point, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
And you said online performances, and how did you broadcast that? Or was that through an organization that was picking out other musicians at the same time, and that was your spot? Or
Well, one of the bars and restaurants that I worked at had scheduled, what they were doing was broadcasting, because they couldn't have live performance in the bar area. They had set it up so all of their TV screens would broadcast the performers, and we would perform from our homes.
oh wow,
This is the
That's
mill in
awesome.
the mill in West Boylston.
Okay.
Great crew over there, wonderful people, and they had teamed up with Reunion Tap and Table in Grafton, and they were doing it together. So they would put together nights where they would have like two artists, and we would each play for an hour, that sort of thing. Or we did a was it a New Year's Eve show? Yeah, we did a New Year's Eve show last year where there was maybe 4 different performers, and we each played for half an hour. And they broadcasted it on their big screens. So
that's
and
cool.
played it in the bar. Yeah, it was kind of nice for people. I mean, I don't know what it was like, because I wasn't in the bar. Kind of an interesting scenario to be performing here to a bunch of people and knowing that there's a bunch of people in a bar watching you, but not being able to interact with them. So
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
that's a challenge.
but it was cool. It was definitely an experience, and it kept me playing and moving forward during a time that was kind of interesting.
Right. Wow.
Well, and obviously, the best case scenario, you got to perform on New Year's and still be at home.
Exactly. Yeah. It was fantastic.
Nice.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. So we did want to talk a little bit about, you've got an album out, and I know again, we were in some of our chatting before we started the show, you'd mentioned that you've got some music that you've been writing, but you've been having trouble finding time to record that, because obviously you've been really busy between the gigs and then the teaching. But you do have an album out at the moment that people can go listen to online, and the album's called Better Days. And we've been listening to the songs on it in preparation to be able to chat about it a little bit. I know Ted's been getting some notes together as well. But I've really been enjoying listening to this. I feel like it's nice, easy listening. It's acoustic vocals. It's very laid back. You do have a few other instruments in there, but for the most part, it's just you, and it's you playing all of the instruments. You did all the recording, all the writing, everything is you. So, I'd love to get into that a little bit and talk a bit about that process and some of your songs. I was curious. So I was listening to Garden, and there's a sound throughout the beginning of that, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. To me, it almost sounds like, when you take your finger and run it along the top of a glass. By any chance, is that an EBow, or did you?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's 2 different EBow tracks layered to create a harmony.
Okay.
Well, one of them comes in and then the other one fades in with it. Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't even
cool.
sure. I was like, I was like, how did I do that? And as you were talking about it, I was like, I had to think, because that was a while back.
Yeah.
And when I recorded this, and it was an EBow.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. I've heard EBow on a few things. My guitar teacher used to use it quite a bit on his music, and actually he still uses it he gigs with an old band that he was with in the late 80s, early 90s, and I see him use it when I go see him perform. It's a very cool tool that I don't think most people know about. So if you're not familiar with an EBow, maybe you could explain to the audience a little bit about what exactly that is and how it works.
Yeah, it creates a harmonic overtone. It interacts with the string. It sends out some sort of resonant frequency, probably with magnets. Magic or something. I'm not sure how exactly it works, but I like magic, fairy dust, right? It's but it creates a harmonic overtone with its interaction of the string, and then you can create that. You can change that harmonic overtone. So the same way that when you have a guitar, you have. Well, I got to pick in the strings, but you have your harmonics that you can create, well, that resonates them and creates that harmonic overtone, and then you can change it. So yeah, they're kind of a fun tool. I haven't used it that much live. I picked one up used, and it sits on a shelf. So, but it's nice to be able to. I don't have I've always wanted to get a keyboard controller for recording. It's not something I've ever dabbled with in that sense, but to be able to use string patches and things like that to create that element should be probably my next purchase, actually. But nice. I should put that on the list of things to acquire and learn how to use.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many different things out there. It's been kind of mind-boggling to me. The episodes I've done with Keisha lately, we've been talking a lot about artists that we've found through social media and how social media and the internet's really changed, I think, the landscape of how independent artists are being discovered and getting their music in front of people. And there are a number of artists I've discovered that it amazes me when I find out that their tracks, they don't have a band behind them. There's one artist that he's got some sort of a digital drum track, but it sounds like real drums. He can program them however he wants, and the bass line is programmed the same way. So he's posting these videos of him playing the guitar from his songs, and behind him you can see whatever the app is that he's using for his drums and his bass. You can see the drums lighting up whichever one's being hit in the background. You can see it'll switch to the bass. Sometimes you can see the frets and the strings light up whatever the bass is playing. And it's just amazing to me what people are doing out of their own home studios these days, and without even needing a band behind them to create that kind of music. And even you may not have the string patches, but the EBO still is a way to kind of add that ambient sound to your music, which it's not something that would be used all the time, but it's something that you can use to add a little bit of extra flavor and layering to your music, which I think is really cool. So I was really intrigued when I heard that. I was like, I think that's an EBO, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to ask him about that. So
I listened to it and I didn't pick it up. I don't know. I'm clearly not EBO never registered. Never picked up on that.
Yeah, but you'd probably have to kind of know what it is for that to resonate. That's
also
with you,
half of it.
It is kind of an odd tool.
Yeah, for sure.
No. I did listen to most. I just made basic notes for each of the tracks. But for the first one, Cast by Stars, that song has a general cadence of just the acoustic, just kind of keeping time and the rhythm of what's going on with the song. But during a couple of different parts, it kind of comes in at the chorus. You have this triplet slow chord triplet progression in there, which inverses at the end and then comes back forward again. And I really liked how that helped break up the cadence of the song. That stuck out to me as something really unique. I'm like, that's a cool thing. It's simple, not a complicated bit, but
just an extra layer to
first listen and high level. That little triplet going through the three notes of the chord there was a nice little touch. Really,
thank you.
Thought that was pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Not something I anticipated on finding it, because I think acoustic, and I'm thinking generally, obviously one track. Obviously, you have multiple tracks for each of these songs, but I just kind of get in the mode of just thinking of just acoustic strumming. All right, this is what we're doing, and then you have this secondary track with the add-on there, and I'm like, nice.
It's one of the difficulties I think in recording that I've encountered is making things sound full and big and adding space to recordings, which is it's an art. I mean, it's obviously why people study it. But I've always leaned towards I have a lot of different musical loves, but one of them has always been the singer-songwriter type genres, that sort of stuff. I'm a huge Joni Mitchell fan. That sort of music I've always been drawn to it. Gillian Welsh, David Rawlings, their whole catalog to me is just, a nice magical space. And, there's just lots of stuff like that I've always been drawn to, aside from what I typically, I also do a lot of like rock playing, obviously, and a lot of like funk, and I love jazz, those different elements. But, I think when I compose, I end up being drawn more towards that singer-songwriter type element. Sometimes I try to break myself out of it and write a different type of song, like, all right, when I'm in a mode of writing, and I'll be like, all right, today I'm not going to write a sad song today. If I can help it,
I had enough coffee. It's going to be a good day.
Absolutely.
Nice. And then the other song. So I will say, "Cast by Stars" was probably one of my favorites off the album, which is really. It's hard to say.
Second place for me. I really like that song too, but I think I've got one that edges out just a little bit further. But go ahead. Yeah,
I'll be curious to see what your top pick was. So for me, like, I had a hard time. I really enjoyed all of them. So it would be hard for me to pick a favorite, but I think that one was probably maybe at the top of my list. Tough Day for Blue Eyes, I think, would maybe have been my second, if I had to pick a second off of that. And I really enjoyed that. It opens with harmonica, which is very nice. I got some strong Neil Young vibes off of that for me anyway. But I really enjoyed listening to that. I found myself kind of between that and Cast by Stars, kind of going back and forth between those two. But like I said, it's really hard to pick one because I enjoyed them all, but I'm curious to know what Ted picked.
Before I get into that song, I also want to do a brief shout out for the Whiskey and Vicodin track.
That was good.
It's very much I don't know. It has that. If there was a music video for it, it's definitely dude at a dive bar, and like, I don't know, it's kind of like opening scene, if you will. But it has, I don't know, that was like my initial picture in just the sound. I'm not a lyric person, just very much into how the music sounds and flows, and the voice is another instrument in the mix, and that's how I just perceive it. So that's what it reminded me of. So I appreciate it for that, because there's obviously other songs that in the past that kind of do the similar thing. But
I had sliced my thumb open right down the center. Ooh. And that song was inspired because at the time I had to take Vicodin. They had given me a prescription for Vicodin.
Oh, wow.
And, that was tough for a guitar teacher. I had to have a big marshmallow on your thumb for, weeks and then wonder, okay, did I slice anything important? I only got 6 stitches, right? But it was right down the center of my thumb. Glass had got it. And
you shouldn't get into bar fights. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So that's where the thought of that song came from, partially. So.
Nice. No, but my favorite track is the third one, Just the Thought of It All, because it, to me, it's acoustic, but then it has the acoustic lead over it and gives that nice conversation between the instruments back and forth a bit. And it had some Zeppelin-esque influence in there to me.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm a huge Zeppelin fan.
Yeah. So there was just a couple of calls, or maybe some of the note. It's not Zeppelin, but
not by any means.
It has, I don't know, something about it. It said Zeppelin to me, or Zeppelin-esque is the word I have in my notes for it, based on just how that song progresses. And that one really stands out as my favorite one.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you both for listening. I always joke with students and people saying that, when I was young, I learned to play guitar from Jimmy Page. Basically it's like everything I need to know about guitar, I learned from Jimmy Page. I mean, in so many ways, as a child, I I had a Zeppelin book. I learned all my first position chords. I learned even some more complicated chords, open tunings, all that sort of stuff came from learning Led Zeppelin songs as a child, so I'm sure it resonates in there in different ways, but it's funny that you picked up on that in some way.
Yeah. Well, and I always, and I think for a person writing original music, it's a challenge to come up with your own voice and not sound like you're playing somebody else, because it's easy to do that when you listen to something and then all of a sudden that's where it's in the back of your brain. You're not consciously doing it, but then it comes out that way. It kind of was steered in that direction. And so, as you compose music and various songs, how do you avoid that, or can you avoid that? or what is your, do you have something in mind that makes it more your voice, or have you just been doing it long enough that is easier now than it has been? Or do you fall into a trap of accidentally or listening to it back and like, oh, that is way too much. This band, I got to cross that bit out and, refocus what you're actually trying to accomplish.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever feel that. I think sometimes I feel a lot of, as I write songs, sometimes I feel like those songs have no place, or I just can't find a way to make them work in a certain way that is unique and original, or my own style, something that I want to put forward. So, but I definitely see what you're saying. Every now and then I'll write a riff and I'll be like, this riff sounds really like it could have been on that album, and do I go with it, or how do we get around that?
Right, because it's it's a constant challenge, and especially when music is everywhere and everyone has the ability to promote. It's a very competitive space at the same time, and trying to be unique and stand out without copying and ticking somebody off on the other end, and
or even
that's my
wondering,
riff.
Have I heard this before?
Yeah, right.
I wrote a song. I was working on a song the other day that I wrote, and I was like, have I heard this before? I'm like, is this just something I'm recalling from my memory, or is this an original idea? I'm not even sure. But I couldn't place it, so I was like, well, I'm just going to keep going with it.
Yeah, all right. I mean, it's fair game right now until you find it.
Yeah, until I find it and go, oh, wait, this sounds a lot like that.
Right.
I am always curious to know a little bit more about the songwriting process, because that's always something that I've never really been somebody who's good at writing my own music. I could, if somebody played a chord progression, I could play a solo over it. But I've never been really good at writing my own stuff. So I'm always curious to find out more about what your process is like. Are there certain things that give you inspiration for a song and then it just kind of comes out? Or do you sit down and you write your guitar parts first and then you come up with the lyrics? Or do you have the lyrics in mind and then you lay down guitar for that? Like what's your process typically been when you're writing a song?
I think basically everything you described.
Yeah.
I mean, you approach from all sorts of angles. So like the song Tough Day for Blue Eyes that you mentioned, I wrote that song in a morning in 20 minutes. Like it just kind of spilled right out.
Wow.
It was just something that I had the thought for the line, and then I wrote it and the lyrics and the chords, and it all kind of came together very quickly. Other songs I will work at for, weeks and weeks and sometimes months, coming back to them, rewriting lyrics, writing extra verses. Sometimes I'll come up with an interesting chord progression first, and I'll be like, oh, I like this chord progression. I like the way these chords are working together. How does this work? How can I make this into a song? So it really comes from a lot of different angles. I think one of the biggest challenges for me, and this has been, something that I'm dealing with like right now, especially, is finding time to rehearse it and play through songs over and over and over till they work themselves out and start to feel natural. Because it's one thing to write a song and then have it on a piece of paper. But if I don't play it 15, 20 times in a row or, over the course of a couple of weeks, it's not going to grow. It's not going to turn into anything and start to take life of its own. And I'm not going to work the little kinks out and things. So it's, that's kind of where I'm at now in this process, where I've got lots of songs that I've written. I've narrowed a few down that I definitely want to record for the next release that I want to do. I've got some that I'm still working on, and I'm like, I'd like to get this on there, but some of them are even old songs that I couldn't get on the first record because they didn't fit the space. Some are brand new that I'm just writing right now. So it's
sure.
I find what works best for me too is in terms of a songwriting process, like if I can wake up Monday morning and attack it, then I feel pretty good about the week. I can keep going with it through the whole week. That song will stick in my head. I'll keep playing it. I'll keep working through it. It's a process that I certainly have not mastered in any way, shape, or form. And I'd like to actually, I'm really looking forward to spending more time doing that. So
sure.
Well, and you mentioned that prior to this, at the beginning, before we hit record, that you were looking at performing with some friends and making it more of a trio group. Yeah. And how, for the songs that you've already written, are you going to keep them acoustic as you have, and what you had, or possibly maybe they weren't, but are you going to adapt it to what the trio group would be, or are you going to keep the core of all what you've already done, or are you going to extend it into what this new group would be?
Yeah, so we're playing some of my original music in the group, but the songs that we're playing, none of them are from that time frame. It's all newer stuff that I've written, some of it with the intent of this group in mind. Some of them I wrote beforehand. I just intended them for a band when I wrote them. So it's sometimes when I write a song, I'm like, well, this isn't a song that I feel is going to work with just me and an acoustic guitar. This is something I need a band for. So, so when I put that band together, it was exciting for me because now I had an outlet for it. I was like, this is great. Now I can take these songs that weren't going to work acoustic. They were just going to be too much for a solo acoustic sort of thing, and put them in a band environment. So we've got a handful of songs that we've been doing together. We haven't been playing together. Let's see, the last show we did, I think, was in October. So hopefully we'll try to get ourselves rehearsing again. That's really the big goal.
And because we talked about our favorite tracks, what is your favorite track on your Better Days album?
Mine? I still play Cast by Stars a lot when I play live. Like, that's probably the one that I gravitate to. Yeah, that might be probably my favorite. I don't know.
It's a good song. It's got a nice, yeah. I am curious. So when you play live, you presumably were just playing you. You didn't have somebody else playing guitar with you. How do you handle the songs? Like, you had a few songs that have some acoustic soloing. Do you play with loop pedals and those sorts of things? Because it seems like a lot of acoustic guitarists, singer-songwriters do that.
Yep.
And that's kind of a new thing for me too. I've seen that more with attending the Guitar League meetings, which that's how you found out about us, was through Guitar League. And Jay was supposed to be the guest musician for the December meeting. And unfortunately, we found out that the December meeting had to be canceled due to a conflict with the space. But the Guitar League meetings, most of the guitarists that I've seen perform at those all use loop pedals, which I think is a really cool piece of equipment that I know somebody had asked at one of the sessions, how do you know when to start and stop the loop pedal? And I feel like it's one of those things you can't really explain to people. You have to kind of just use that pedal and get acquainted with how it works and kind of figure things out. But I mean, have you found that that's something that was kind of hard for you to figure out how to use, or?
It is a little tricky. I mean, you have to, most of the time you have to tap in on the one and then tap out on the 1, you know?
Okay.
So if you're recording something, it's like a conscious thought. The real difficulty is if you're singing at that time. So sometimes maybe I'm singing and I want the solo to come in right as soon as I stop singing. Then I've got to tap in while I'm still singing and then tap out and then start soloing and, you know, and click on a lead pedal. I keep a very simple board when I gig. It has, I have a looper, a delay pedal, clean boost, and then I use a very subtle overdrive occasionally, but it's just a hint of overdrive, and then a tuner. So that's all I ever do. I don't get into the I don't do a lot of multi-looping. I don't get into looping my vocals or adding harmonies or any of that sort of stuff. I try to keep it very natural sounding. But it is tricky. Occasionally I'll do a song where you don't tap in on the 1, where you have to tap, you know, if I'm working on a song like say I'm doing Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd, you've got those pickup notes that come in before beat 1. So you've got to tap in to get those pickup notes, and then you've got to tap out right at the beginning of those pickup notes and then start the solo. So layering that to do like that intro solo is a very complicated sort of element.
Right.
So it's a tricky thing. Actually, with regard to the Guitar League, I have rescheduled to June 8th. So I'll be back there on June 8th, which is my birthday actually. So.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
So.
Yeah. It's, so I feel like you got to have pretty good rhythm and timing then to use it. It's
absolutely,
especially if you're singing with it. And so it's almost like, to me, and I know you mentioned you played a little bit of piano, you played some drums for a while. For me, piano and drums are not an instrument that I could ever really grasp, because I just don't have the coordination to do 2 totally different things with my hands on a piano.
That's hard.
And then drums, like you're doing different things with both your hands and your feet. And I could just never, those were 2 instruments that I could not grasp. And I feel like you almost have to have some of the qualities of somebody who can do those things in order to use a loop pedal. Like if you've got no sense of timing or rhythm, it seems like you're pretty much out of luck if you're going to try to use one of those. I've been really intrigued. You know, I've thought about getting one, but it's like, boy, I don't know. I feel like it could be fun just to experiment, and kind of it helps you kind of serve as a one-man band, so to speak, because you can produce all your different layers as one person and be able to do that. But I'm curious, do you use that when you record your music as well, or only when you're doing live performances? Okay.
Just live.
Yeah. So you actually lay down separate tracks when you do the recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I was in Key West year and a half, 2 years ago now, and there was a acoustic guitar player, and he had a loop pedal, and for the style of playing that he was doing a lot of, you know, the taps on the acoustic and, you know, general drumming, if you will, on top of it all, and then you know, using the loop pedal so seamlessly. It was a very cool experience to just like sit down, chill, and just watch the show, and you know, just simple tap. And he was the only one, and he was singing, and he had a co-singer with him. They were phenomenal. It's so cool that you can get so much, room to stretch with a single guitar and still be able to do so much, given the the looping that goes along with it. Right. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty
I haven't explored that element of it with the percussive elements of adding layering. And I have a friend that does that really well. And, you know, he can pull tracks in and pull tracks out and fade things in and fade things out, but he uses a monster pedal board to do that. You know, it's an elaborate setup to be able to do a lot of that stuff well. It's and it definitely requires a lot of forethought. You know, we put a bass line in with an octave pedal, so you know, but it sounds fantastic. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It's something I have not. I loop a simple guitar track, and so I can take a solo to make that 2-minute song maybe a 2.5-minute song, and to have some fun and to add some space. You know, I love to be able to take guitar solos here and there. So there's not too many other opportunities that you can use to solo when you're playing just by yourself. So.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And nothing wrong with keeping it simple.
No.
Right. Sometimes simpler is better, honestly.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So believe it or not, we are, I think, about 45 minutes into the show right now. Before we go into Song of the Week, Ted, was there anything else? I know you had some notes. Was there anything else you wanted to go over?
We've gone through.
Okay. Jay, did you have anything you wanted to add that we didn't cover?
Not that I can think of, but thank you very much for having me on today. This has been wonderful.
Oh yeah, anytime. It was a pleasure having you on the show. So I guess at this point we can go into the Song of the Week. Ted and I will go first and give Jay some time to kind of see how we usually do this. And then if you're feeling like you want to opt out on this, then that's fine too.
Pressure.
But we'll give you some time to think about it as we go through. I'll give my usual reminder that we have a Spotify Song of the Week playlist that we put into the description of every episode. You can click on the link to that. It'll take you to the playlist. If you're watching the video version of the show, we also put a Spotify scan code on the screen. And all you have to do is open Spotify on your phone or mobile device, tap the camera icon in the search bar and hold your device up to the screen, and it will take you to our playlist where you can find all of our picks. We also have a new playlist for our song review segment that we're doing, which doesn't have a whole lot of music in it yet because we haven't had a whole lot of songs submitted, but we're going to add Jay's songs to that today as well. So we'll put the link to that in the description. We'll also put another code on screen where you can scan and get to that playlist and check out the songs that we have on there so far. And with that, my pick for this week is going to be one that I think Jay might have forgotten he had until I brought it up before the show, just to make sure that I did indeed have one of his songs. But my song is going to be Jay's cover of Use Somebody, which I found on Reverb Nation. And if you're not aware, this song was written by Kings of Leon. So this is a cover. But I don't think I've ever heard an acoustic cover of this song. So I thought it was a really interesting choice. What I really loved about it is it still had a lot of the qualities of the Kings of Leon version, but it had your personal spin on it, which I thought was very cool. It's all acoustic. It's acoustic and vocals, and I felt that Jay's vocals were very powerful on the track and still gave it some of that heavy sound that you might be accustomed to hearing in the original electric version of the song, but again, with that laid back acoustic aspect to it. So a really cool song. I listened to it a few times. I kept coming back to it. I'm a big fan of the original. So I was certainly interested in the fact that I saw that you had a cover of this, and I would highly recommend that everybody give this track a listen as well. I will link to that in the description of the episode as well, because I don't think it's on Spotify, so I won't be able to add it to the playlist, but we'll link to it so you can find it. And on that note,
good old Reverb Nation page that Jay totally forgot he had.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, that's still a thing? Oh, geez, thanks, Google.
That was a surprise to me. So.
Yeah. It's always good when we can surprise the guest with one of their own songs.
That's out in the world.
Yeah, it exists.
Yes.
So this week I have a band that came across to me, I want to say 2-3 weeks ago. Another guest we had on our show earlier this year, Eli, he is doing some song battles on his Twitch channel, and the viewers submit songs and they go head to head, and then chat votes their favorite song, and it's bracket style, goes down to the final one, and then there's like the one winning song of the week for the show that he does. And so one of the songs that had come up, the band is called the Washups. They're a basement rock band out of New Jersey. They're really good, and their YouTube videos have like 29 views. Like, they're like, no one's looking at their YouTube stuff, but their music is really awesome. And this track in particular that I'm gonna want to mention, it's called Philadelphia Avenue. and just classic, kind of, it's almost jam rock a bit. It's just very upbeat. It's really cool guitar riffs, and I don't know, it really gets you moving along. And I mean, I've listened to a number of their tracks, and they all are very catchy. But Philadelphia Avenue in particular really stands out. So I have to bring that one up as my song of the week, and highly encourage everyone to listen to it, because I mean, no one's heard of it, because clearly 29 views on YouTube is not going to, and 3 of those views are mine. So so just saying, that's another band that should be up and coming, because they've got some cool stuff going. So shout out to the Washups.
Nice. It's always mind-boggling to me, and this is a conversation again that I had with Keisha during the last episode I did with her, that the artist that we were talking about that episode, I'm looking at his YouTube, and while he's got a decent amount of views on his videos, I'm listening to his music and I'm like, why is this guy not have millions and millions of views on these videos? I mean, the stuff is just phenomenal. So it's always interesting to me how stuff like that happens. You know, you've got musicians and artists putting out just phenomenal music, and people aren't necessarily finding it. And I feel like this is kind of the segment that I use to, in a way, shout it from the rooftops that this is a really great song. Go check it out. So
right.
I'm definitely going to give that a listen,
just because it's professional quality recording.
Right.
And and you can do that at home now.
Yeah.
You don't need all this extra expensive studio time when we were, many years ago, I suppose. But still, if the quality can be made, and, it's fun to find diamonds amidst everything, because it is a competitive space. Right. But yeah. Really great tune. Highly recommend it.
Gonna check it out.
Very cool.
Jay, did you have some time? Do you have a song you want to talk about?
I don't know if I have a specific song off of this album, but I'm gonna go with something that I've probably listened to this year more than anything else. I've had it on repeat quite often, and the band Snarky Puppy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
Okay.
They're primarily instrumental, outstanding musicians. They do a lot of live stuff. There's a lot of live YouTube recordings that they've done that are really amazing to check out. But they put out a live album this past year called Live at the Royal Albert Hall. And I just can't stop listening to it whenever I want to, whenever I'm looking for something to listen to, I usually end up putting that on.
Nice.
It's, if you haven't checked out Snarky Puppy, it's a little bit of an acquired listen. They're very jazz, very, very funky, very. I'm
already sold.
Yeah, but they rock. They're really fantastic band. Almost any song on that album
nice.
would be great. So.
Okay,
perfect,
awesome. Yeah, that's one of the things I like about this segment when we have a guest is I feel like I discover cool new music too that I might not have otherwise heard. So, and it is the person who edits the shows, I have to go through and listen to all of these when I put them together because I pull a clip. So it gives me an opportunity to listen to these. So I'll definitely be checking them out. And just based on your description, it already sounds like a group that I'm going to highly enjoy. So
should definitely check them out.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Ted, did you have something you were gonna?
No, I was just gonna chime in and kind of echo what you had said, that sometimes with Matt, Kayla, and myself, we grew up together. We're used to the same circles of music, and so trying to branch out and grasp, using this segment as a way to talk about, oh, by the way, I found this particular song, and having a guest, which obviously is outside of that circle that we grew up with, like, new life, new recommendations are always pretty neat. And because, like I said, there's so much music out there, and there's lots of good stuff out there, just a matter of bringing it to the forefront. So that's why we really like using this segment.
It always it depresses me a little when people say there's no good, there's no good music now. It's not, and it's like, no, there's lots of good music.
Lot of good music now.
You just have to look for it.
Radio.
Maybe exactly. This, you might not find it there, but if you look for it, there's a lot of really fantastic music in the world being made.
For sure. So the one other thing I did want to add, so are you accepting new students if anybody was interested, or are you kind of at capacity at the moment?
I will always try to fit anybody who's interested in. I think have maybe 1 or 2 openings that I could try to squeeze in a new student.
Okay. What's the best way if somebody was interested in doing that? Should they go to your website, or do you have a better way?
No, they can go to my website. They can send me an email. My website is www.jaygmusic.com.
Okay.
My email is just the letter jgrahammusic@gmail. So yeah.
Okay.
People are always welcome. You can find me in lots of different ways. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. And if you want to check out Jay's music, you can also find that on his website. We'd highly recommend heading over there and giving all of the tracks, because we didn't even cover all of the tracks that are on the album when we talked about it today. So definitely go over. You can buy the album off of there as well. It's only $5, or if you want to give a little bit more, and I always like to donate a little bit extra when I purchase an album like that, because I know these are all independent artists that are doing all of their own recording and distributing and all that stuff. So definitely go give it a listen, consider purchasing the album. And on that note, Jay, thank you again for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you on, getting to talk to you about your songs and your songwriting process and your gigs and everything music. Has really been a great time.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And,
I think the only thing we forgot is to plug our own show and do the
that
outro.
was coming next, but if you want to do that, you're welcome to.
No, you have the script.
Okay,
I'm teasing.
All right.
We were wrapping up, and I didn't want to forget about it.
All righty. So, as always, as a reminder, if you have an idea for a future topic for a future show, or if you'd like to be a guest, or if you're an independent musician and artist and you'd like to come on the show and talk about your music, or even if you want to just submit a song for us to talk about, we're trying to do this new song review segment, reach out to us and let us know. There are a few ways you can do that. You can head to our Anchor page at anchor.fm/distortedopinions, and you can leave us a voice message there. You can also find links to our social media platforms where you can go leave us a comment on any of our platforms. You can also send us an email at distortedopinionsshow@gmail.com. We also have a YouTube channel, which I'm not going to put the link to on screen because it's a very long URL. But as I've mentioned before on previous shows, we're trying to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube so that we can get a custom URL. And we do have, Matt has promised us that if we get to 100 subscribers, and Jay is probably going to think this is the most bizarre thing. So Matt is a big fan of the Home Depot jingle. And we talked about this on a previous show. And Matt has said if we get to 100 subscribers, he will record himself playing the Home Depot jingle on his guitar at an undisclosed Home Depot location. And he will take it a step further if we get to 150 subscribers and really embarrass himself and show up in a pair of Ugg boots and skin tight shorts and a skin tight tank top, which I'm just like, why would you do that to yourself? But it's Matt. If you'd have to know Matt to understand, this is a very Matt thing to do. So if you would like to see either one of those things happen,
maybe that's why we haven't gotten to 100 yet.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know that. Well, maybe the 100, but the 150, I'm not sure how much of a prize that is. So it's like, unless you want to see him embarrass himself and get a chuckle out of it, I don't know. But yeah, if you want to see either of those things happen, head to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. You can just search for Distorted Opinions over there and you'll find us. And then, like I said, you can send us an email or leave us a voice message or contact us through social media. We're pretty responsive no matter what method you choose. So with that, thank you again, Jay. It was great having you on the show.
Yep. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And we will see everybody next week with an all new episode. See you then.